honestly have no idea what I'm doing. But this is kind of for memory purposes and also to help with awareness, I guess. Well, as all you guys know, a year ago today, Maggie passed away from something called PPCM, that's peripartum cardiomyopathy. And I want to tell you about my worst day of my life, which is that. But all the best days of my life that led up to that. Maggie and I married December 28th, 2008. And that was the happiest day of my life. It was everything I dreamed it would be. It was everything that was perfect. Everything was perfect in my world. God gave me the most beautiful wife, loving wife, caring wife. And we spent the next 8 years and 10 days absolutely head over heels in love with each other. I have written so many different times about different things that, if you want to read those, feel free. There's at least 4 blogs, I guess, of the things I've done. Talking about the little things I miss of Maggie, the little quirks, the little things that hit me like a rock, are the things that are just so wonderful that I miss her. I miss her a ton. My youngest was born November 4th, 2016. Maggie gave birth, no complications, no issues. For the next 10 days, she spent that in the basement in our spare bedroom with him, trying to get him, make sure he was fed, and make sure that I got sleep so I could chase 3 other kids around the house while she was trying to just take care of one. And over the weeks, she progressively had a harder time breathing, had a harder time walking around, had a harder time doing anything. We were worried about her, but we checked it off to postpartum, lack of exercise, because she was still recovering from the pregnancy. First she couldn't make it up the flight of stairs without getting winded and sitting down for a few minutes, and then it was she couldn't really chase the kids around the house without getting winded. And then she went in for her 6-week checkup thinking that if something happened, they'd flag it. Well, they gave her a clean bill of health. Christmas time happened. It was crazy season, work-wise and life-wise. Christmas is always crazy. And well, during that time, we went out and ran a few errands here and there, but she was just wiped. Every time we did anything, it took her a day to recover from it. She got to the point where she was having a hard time sleeping at night, so that she would pile up pillows so that she'd almost be sitting up. She was having such a hard time breathing, laying on her side or on her back or on her stomach. She just could not breathe. And finally she decided that she needed to get checked out for asthma, because obviously it was a breathing problem. Well, retrospect, it was definitely not a breathing problem. And after my 4 days of rotation, she went to an Instacare to get checked out. It was nothing crazy. She didn't think it was going to be anything crazy. She just was thinking, finally time to get diagnosed with asthma. So she ran off after she put down Ollie for his nap after he got his feeding. She called back saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be a 2-hour wait before they can even see me in the doctor's office to tell me that I got a breathing problem and may as well just go home. But they decided to check her vitals because I guess she looked a little bit pale or something. And her vitals were, I think it was like 70 over 50, maybe 70 over 40 for her blood pressure. And her heart was sitting in the 130s while she was sitting there in the chair. She wasn't exercising, nothing. She was just sitting there in the chair. And that's when they realized something was very drastically wrong. They called an ambulance because they were insecure. They were not in an emergency room. And the ambulance drove her the mile to the local hospital that was only about 5 minutes from our actual house as well, so that was a blessing. At that point, she called me up and said that I needed to get to the hospital immediately. And so I got a hold of a neighbor and I got a hold of a friend to get formula for our 2-month-old, not even 2-month-old at the time. And this was January 2nd, 2017. And I got there as fast as I could. I had to shovel a little bit of driveway, open up the garage, get the car out, and that was a chore, but our neighbors helped very much for that one. And I got to the emergency room. They said, "Oh, we think she's got pneumonia. She's got fluid on her lungs. And we think she possibly septic." And I stayed with her all evening, and I had to go home to make sure the kids were fed and ready for bed and put in bed that night. So I went home with her in the ER transitioning to the ICU. The next day, it's still all blur. Another friend watched the kids that morning so I could run to the hospital and be with her while she was in the ICU. At that point, they had realized that there was something drastically wrong with her heart, and they diagnosed her with peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is an enlargement of the heart. And there's a lot more detail into what that really is, but I honestly don't know what it is, and I'm not a doctor, so it doesn't make any sense to me. I just know that her heart enlarged and made it so it didn't function properly, and since it wasn't functioning properly, it was dumping fluid in her lungs, and that was causing her breathing problem, which is, cyclical, catastrophic failure eventually. So I'd spend the mornings as much time as I could with her, but I always felt like I had a duty to be with my kids and chase my kids around and make sure they were cared for. So I would go home and stay with the kids as much as I could, and I'd spend as much time as I could at the hospital. But it was always, I felt bad about being away from the kids when someone else has to watch them, but I always felt bad about being at home with the kids when Maggie was in the hospital. And Maggie's mother came either that day or the next day in the evening, and we started trading off who was at home and who was at the hospital. The prognosis was that there was a 66% chance of recovery. Her heart was functioning at about 5%, I think is what they told me. I mean, it's a year ago now, so honestly, the specific numbers are starting to escape me. I mean, the things I remember are the smell of her hair, her smile, her love. I always loved buying her purple things because that was her favorite color. And just how much she cared about me and the kids, about the little things that she did for us that showed so much meaning. And there she was, hooked up to IVs, oxygen, all sorts of stuff just to keep her heart pumping. And they said, "You'll never have any more kids." Well, we weren't planning on having any more kids. We thought 4 was a good number. At least I did. I think she was thinking maybe one more, and I was like, I was not happy with that idea. But there was hope. We had hope. She was in the ICU for 4 days. And January 7th came. Cindy had got to spend the night with her the previous night. January 7th is Leah's birthday. We had a guys thing at church. Maggie was supposed to be getting out of the hospital sometime between Monday and Wednesday, depending on how her medication took. She had a couple of touch and go moments at the hospital where she scared the doctors, they said. And everything was going good. Everything was going up. Everything was progressing the way it was expected. She was 29. She was in relatively good condition. They expected full recovery. At least 60 some odd percentile, they said, was percent of chance of surviving this. Technically, it's 2/3, so 66.666666, whatever. So my mom knew that Maggie was going to need long-time recovering, so she had already booked a flight to come out here, and she was supposed to arrive about 5:30 p.m. on January 7th, 2017. I spent the afternoon with Maggie. With the morning, we had a little birthday party for her over lunchtime. We had lunch, and then I went and spent the afternoon with Maggie, and then left her, told her I loved her, and I gave her a kiss. And then went to the airport to pick up my mother. I got my mom home from the airport about a little bit after 6. I was getting her room ready where she was going to be staying for a while. And I got a phone call. Well, my phone was upstairs, but my watch told me I had an unknown phone call, so I just ignored it as a whatever. And then immediately my phone rang again. And that's when I knew something was wrong. I ran upstairs, grabbed my phone, and they told me that Maggie had had cardiac arrest. And that I should get to the hospital immediately. So I ran out to the car, and my mother-in-law got in the car with me, and we drove to the hospital. We didn't even bother parking the car. We just parked in the overhang and just ran inside, got to the elevator, got to the 3rd floor where she was at, where she had just been transferred from ICU to a progressive care unit. And they stopped us in the hallway and directed us to a waiting room because they were doing CPR to revive her. And several minutes later, Cindy, Maggie's mom, talked to the doctors, and they allowed us to come in and talk to her. While they were doing CPR, the whole room was just packed with doctors. They'd been doing CPR for about 30 to 40 minutes at that point. And after a few minutes of praying, pleading with God, they told us that at this point she was going to have severe brain damage at this point. They asked us if we could call it. And so she passed away January 7th, 2017 at 7:08 p.m. And I miss her every minute of the day.